Okay, so this video is gonna be, I guess, maybe a part 3 or 4 to a video that I made a while back, or actually like 2 videos that I made. I wasn't gonna do a series, but the whole Abbott and Allied thing is a really big issue that I've been noticing a lot since I've been traveling. And like I said before, once the B system really rolls out, Abbott and Allied are going to be a big issue for everybody, and of course other law enforcement agencies too. And people can say what they want, but it doesn't really make sense why all of a sudden in recent years security companies have been popping up everywhere, and you can't even go to a local library without having a security guard staring at you, trying to figure out if you're homeless, watching you, harassing you, threatening you, and even telling you that they're going to kick you out if you even look asleep or you just look like you're there because you don't have anywhere to go. In that specific situation where the security guard was kicking people out and stuff at the library, that happened at a library that's in a place I used to live in and hadn't been to in some years, and I went back to visit. And I remember when I used to go to that library, there was no security back then. That's before Abbott and Allied really took over. I didn't have to worry about getting kicked out while reading a book because I could be homeless. I also didn't have to worry about getting kicked out of places because of possibly being asleep or looking asleep, or if I even did just so happen to fall asleep. It's kind of like already a known thing that people commonly will fall asleep while doing homework or doing work on a computer. But it's like now with Abbott and Allied, you could go to jail for that or get kicked out. And it's honestly really funny because Abbott and Allied claim to not be connected to law enforcement and to have nothing to do with the police. They always say, we don't call the police or deal with the police. We're a private security company. They are the police, to be truthfully honest. And where I'm currently at, I was in a library, and this lady, she was about to do a Zoom call or whatever, and she was fixing her ponytail, and while she was doing that, Abbott or Allied, I think it was Allied, came up and was like, no, you can't do that in here, you can't comb your hair in here. She was like, what are you talking about? I'm just fixing my ponytail. And honestly, I don't even really think it's just that the dude thought that she could maybe possibly be homeless. I think he really just wanted to say something to her because he thought she was pretty. And predatory people will commonly do stuff like that. They'll just like do or say anything to you just to have a reason to say something to you. But yeah, so there was that. And I don't know, I could just mention so many situations I've had happen. Like the whole situation I made that post about a while back where I mentioned a lot of racial things that have happened. So much I've even mentioned before in a video that I made like a year or two ago. But I specifically mentioned this situation where I was trying to get something from a hardware store for a project that I was doing. But I couldn't even go in there because the security dude wouldn't even let me in. The first time I did manage to get in, I had actually went there before, but there was no Abbott or Allied there. But the other time, well, the second time I went there, he was there, and I was looking for something. And of course, he did the whole thing where he was trying to act like he was just walking by and wasn't about to kick me out the store. Obviously, it's a really racial situation. And it's like, since I've been where I currently am, I've been carrying more stuff around. But I don't look stereotypically homeless. But the thing is, in areas like this, it's really racial. In these mostly Caucasian areas with high homeless populations, people are going to automatically assume that you're homeless if you're black, really, to be truthfully honest. And if you're a kid or you're really old and you're carrying a lot of stuff, or you're just like walking around by yourself, people also automatically assume that you're homeless in areas like this, but high homeless populations. And it's really interesting. It kind of makes me think back to something that this lady said to me, and she was like, homeless doesn't even have a look. It's the energy you give off, and you have homeless energy. So I guess the loss not having a family thing, and people pick that up. And honestly, it makes sense though, because these security companies, they hire people that are either really messed up and predatory. Well, that's kind of all around the boards. That, and they also hire toxic, abusive kids, like young people in their, sometimes as young as like 19, but usually in their 20s, they hire toxic 20-year-old kids who think that they're Miss Hot or not, and they just think that they're the best looking person on the planet. And those are the best people to get to harass and stalk people all day, because they don't give a crap about anybody. They don't even really like themselves. They just have that ego thing about them. And they're always talking about how good they look, and they don't mind beating up elderly people. Like that video I made a while back about how some Abbott and Allied people, they were in their 20s. A couple were 19 and they had beat up this 90-year-old dude and then sent him to jail. Things like that. That's the type of things that they do, and they want to hire people specifically like that. But anyway, the point I was getting at was that abusive people are really good at picking up energies of people who are also traumatized or who are in situations like that. So honestly, the homeless energy thing, it makes sense, but it's still really racial. I've even had a school counselor tell me that a lot of these security companies will like pretend that they're just doing things because they think you're homeless, but it's really not even about that. It's just racial stuff. But yeah, so I'm trying to remember what I was saying before I went off on this rant. I don't even remember, but I guess I could go over what just happened. So as of right now, I've been trying to go somewhere. Honestly, it's too late now because I fell asleep, because due to the metabolic issues I have, I fall asleep pretty often. I can fall asleep pretty easily, and for whatever reason, I do that a lot on the train, so it's too late for me to go where I was trying to go at this point. But I didn't know that till like just now, because I just checked the time. And so anywho, I was trying to go to this place. I was on the train. I guess I missed my stop, or at least that's what I'm assuming now. But I remember that somebody told me that this was a stop that I needed to look out for. So, when the security people woke me up and told me that I was at the end of the line, I was asleep. Well, I kind of already alluded to that. So they woke me up and they were like, "This is the end of the line, and you got to get back on the other train and go back in the opposite direction." I was like, "Wait a minute, hold up," because I was trying to go somewhere. And so I got off the train, and I was about to try to look at the map to see if this was the right stop or not, because I noticed that where I was at was where somebody told me I needed to look out for. And so I sat down at the terminal, and then of course the security dude walked up to me. He was like, he started shaking his head, and he was like, you got to get back on the train and go in the other direction. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I have been carrying a couple things since I've been where I currently am. I do have a book bag and this one plastic bag, but it's like, it's still reasons why people automatically assume you're homeless. And honestly, I do believe the whole homeless energy thing. It kind of reminds me of when somebody had told me that they knew I didn't have anywhere to go because they'd been in a similar situation before. This was somewhere else, so this was like a few years ago, to be honest. But they were in a similar situation before, and just the way I looked and how I was walking around, it just looked like I didn't have anywhere to go, and I was just wasting time because I didn't have any family or anything to go back to. And so, anywho, sat down, he walked up to me and started telling me about how I needed to get on the train, and I was like, well, I'm trying to see if this is where I'm supposed to be at or not before I just hop back on and go back in the opposite direction. It's very obvious that he didn't believe me, or at least he didn't care, and he just felt like I was a homeless person who just wanted to sit somewhere all day, or who just wanted to go to sleep somewhere. I don't know. Well, not I don't know. I do know, and that's what it is. And honestly, he probably didn't care about where I was trying to go anyway, because law enforcement makes it very clear to me when I go places that they don't even want me. Not only do they not want me in their cities, but they don't want me in the whole state. Like, I've had law enforcement threaten to deport me and threaten to deport me back to other states just because they don't want me in the state in general. So, anywho, I just told them that I was just going to leave anyway and I was going to go somewhere else to look at the map and all that. And so, most likely, he had already got on the radio and let like the other security nearby know that I was walking in that direction. But I don't know, because they do commonly sit places and will like try to hide places so they can be ready to harass somebody. And so anyway, as soon as I got to the parking lot where I'm at now, before I even sat down, I was still standing up because I was about to sit down and look at the map. Before I even sat down, here comes Abbott or Ally, because I don't even always get to read the badges. I just know that it's one of the two. But apparently there's something called Garda World too, but I haven't really had any experiences with them. It's always Abbott or Allied. So before I sit down, security pulls up in the car and tells me about how I need to get my stuff and leave. Now, mind you, there's this white lady a few feet away she was standing there before I even walked up, and she's on her phone doing whatever. But I can't even sit down or even stand anywhere or anything without having the security people come to harass me. And it's like, dang, this is annoying. And it's really crazy because where I previously lived, at least the last place I lived before I had escaped anyway, I used to sit places all the time and I would be on the phone talking to people, or I'd be making a video, or I'd lay somewhere. Also because of health stuff, because like sometimes that was before I even started taking digestive supplements and all that. So like this was still back when I would commonly have to just lay somewhere, anywhere I was at, where people weren't around anyway, and I would have to lay on my back because of just pancreatic issues and some digestive pain. I don't really know why, but like laying on my back for a few minutes would make it go away. But yeah, so I'd have to do that, or I'd just lay somewhere because I couldn't go to sleep at home. Different things like that. I used to be able to do all that where I was at that point in time when I was still staying with relatives. I didn't have to worry about some security people coming and harassing me for being on the phone or for laying somewhere. Which of course I would try to do that in like not public places, but sometimes I really didn't have an option. Or when I would just sit places to read books. I never had security harassing me, and it's like they're in certain places for one, and they're looking for certain people too. And it's like, I guess also where I was at then, people wouldn't automatically assume that I'm homeless. And yeah, it's just a lot of stuff with that, but there wasn't really security out there, which kind of reminds me of something else that I've realized. Not that I was rich, of course, but since I've been where I currently am, I've noticed that in places with more money, or areas with more money, no, let me start over. The towns with more money, and also lower homeless populations and just less poor people in general, I don't see Abbott and Ally. Like, if I wanted to go to sleep in a bus station or something, I could do that if I wanted because there isn't security standing around all day. I even noticed when I went to the Target in one of these areas that there wasn't security as soon as I walked through the door staring me down. Because like I've mentioned before, I commonly get kicked out of places before I even get in. And here comes the security already. Ah, dang. And I know people feel like I'm just complaining or whatever. Or a lot of people may not care because they don't feel like these security companies are their issue. They're not your issue yet. And to be honest, if you're their target, you will always be their issue, whether you're homeless or not, to be honest. Because it's like, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so going back to the whole library thing in NC, there wasn't always security there, but it's like now they're everywhere. And I noticed that they're being put in poor areas like that, specifically to harass the poor people and to harass people of certain ethnic groups. And it's not even just about homeless people. And honestly, I've even seen people who aren't like poor or whatever get harassed. And then another thing, Border Patrol is tied into this. Now you can't even get on the Greyhound and go anywhere anymore. Greyhound doesn't check bags. They've never checked bags. And you can't really take that much stuff on the Greyhound anyway, so yeah, but now what I've noticed is that the Greyhound will be stopped, or when the Greyhound stops at like gas stations or whatever, here comes Border Patrol. They get on anybody who looks like whoever they don't want. They're gonna ask you if you have any vital records. They're even gonna run your birth certificate to see if it's real or not. And what else? They're gonna run it to see if they see your name in the system. And if they don't, or if you don't have vital records, you're getting arrested, and who knows what's gonna happen after that. And they're also gonna go through your bags and check you for drugs. They're even gonna check you for things like weed, which is weird because it's legal in these areas. It kind of reminds me of how California, an open air drug market that's been an open air drug market for years, where people can just not only sell drugs, but stand around and do drugs because they've called it being a hippie for forever and they've normalized it. Because, like I always say, in these mostly Caucasian areas, that's where all the drug issues really are, because that's where they can be, because they're allowed to do it and they don't go to jail for it. But in places like the South, if the cops even think you're smoking weed, then you're going to jail for like the rest of your life until way into your adulthood. You're getting locked up at 12, and if you get out, you won't get out till you're like 45. But yet in these mostly Caucasian areas, they have their kids swimming around in pools of ketamine and stuff. So, yeah, anywho, in that type of area, due to the fact that the cops just wanted to arrest me, because, actually I have a whole video about the situation I'll put in the description, but due to the fact that the cops wanted to arrest me and they couldn't find a reason to, they started checking me for drugs and all that. And of course I don't have any drugs because I don't do drugs. And then they were mad that they didn't find anything. And then somebody was like, in a place where people stand around and sell and do drugs all day, they had the audacity to check you for drugs just because of the racial side to it. And I'm trying to think of what else I could mention. But yeah, going back to the whole Border Patrol thing, somebody actually mentioned this issue years ago. I think even way back in 2021. And they were warning runaways about going to Texas or going through Texas, or even warning runaways who are already living in Texas. Because the thing is, commonly you're not able to get your vital records before running away or getting kicked out. And also, when you're laying low and when there's a missing persons report out, you can't show your vital records even if you do have them. So even if you do have an ID, you can't show them. Or if you're running from a conservatorship, so even if you're like in your 20s or something, you're running from a conservatorship, and there's a missing persons report out, you can't show your vital records. And so this whole Border Patrol thing is going to put a lot of runaways and kicked out kids at risk, and a lot of homeless people at risk in general, who most likely won't have their vital records and different things like that. I've even seen a situation where somebody was in a domestic dispute where they were arguing with somebody and the police were called because somebody thought that the person that they were dating hit them, or quote unquote dating anyway. And then this person was luckily able to get away with it due to the whole pretty privilege thing, because of course the cops will be nice to you when they want to have sex with you. But it's still really messed up that while in a domestic dispute, they found out that there was a warrant out for their arrest for a court date they had missed for some wreck they got into, and they didn't even know that they had a court date because they didn't have an address, or a reliable address, to get their mail sent to. The common situation with an abusive parent where your mail is getting sent there and then they don't tell you, or they just throw all your mail away and things like that. So, that and not being able to go to the place to get the mail because the abusive parent will just attack them physically and verbally. So yeah, there's situations like that, and if that was somebody that the cops didn't think was hot and they didn't want to date her, she would have went to jail over a whole court date that she never knew about and didn't know she missed, and also a warrant she didn't know she had. So there's that. And then there was a whole side situation, which I mentioned before, where this same person actually ended up going to jail eventually behind an abusive cult farm thing that they were living at. Long story. It kind of goes into like how woofing and staying at these work trade places is commonly going to be really abusive, because they know that people are usually only at places like that because they have nowhere else to go and they don't have family. And when people know you don't have family, they know that they can do whatever they want to you. Just like when you're in an abusive situation, all the predators around you pop up, and there's people that'll be like, well, I find it hard to believe that everybody that the person was around was a predator. Like when somebody will say that their parent would traffic them or prostitute them, and then their teachers would sexually abuse them too, and things like that. And people would be like, well, I don't believe everybody around you was a predator. But the thing is, a lot of people are predatory, and whenever you don't have anybody to protect you, how predatory people are reveals itself to you. So yeah, anywho, they were staying at that abusive cult farm, and the lady kept calling the police on her for things that weren't happening. But when the lady would attack her, the police wouldn't do anything. And I remember this person, they're mixed, and they were like, I think I'm being racially, no, I think I'm experiencing racism. And I was like, I've been telling you that, revolving around a lot of things, even situations with jobs and people either not wanting to hire them or them getting fired and being accused of being on crack. And it's actually kind of funny. They don't even look or act like they're on crack. It kind of reminds me of how in my previous situation, I would get told that I was schizophrenic because I was wearing an afro. And in other situations, I've been accused of being on crack for wearing an afro. So yeah, anywho, trying to make this all have something to do with each other. Oh yeah, another thing, the Canada Border Patrol situation. I mentioned that in the post too, or at least I think I did, where like the security people started asking me if I had two parents and if I had a dad and if all my siblings had the same parents, and if I went to school and if I finished school and if I dropped out of school. And I was like, what does any of this have to do with anything, to be honest? And then the security people ended up cursing me out, and they were like, you know what, just shut up, just shut the F up, because I don't believe a word you're saying. And yeah, they didn't believe I had a dad and a whole bunch of other stuff. And they did tell me that I didn't seem family oriented. I do kind of wonder if they ended up Googling me and seeing all the smear campaigning about me, because that could obviously cause a lot of issues. But I don't even know if it was that. It just seemed like some racial stuff. And as people may know, melanated people are disappearing and being found dead in Canada. So I guess it was a good thing I didn't go, but I did want to go to the museum, but I guess it's whatever. And they pretty much told me that it just seemed like I was an orphan just running around because I didn't have anywhere else to go. That kind of makes me think back to that whole, it's not even about looking homeless, it's about having homeless energy statement. But anywho, that whole situation reminded me of how my experiences with medical professionals have been. Not even just in the Cash for Kids system, I just mean medical professionals in general. And it's all the same. It really is. They're the same thing. But, hold up. Did this stop recording? Oh, no, never mind. But yeah, it's all like being locked up, really. It's like you can't even really do anything or go anywhere anymore because you have security staring you down and kicking you out of places, keeping you from entering places. A lot of racial stuff. And the thing is, if I was with my parents, none of these things would even be happening. It's like these things specifically happen because people see me going places by myself, and that's why they feel like I'm the person to target. Because I know for a fact if I was with my parents, I wouldn't be getting kicked out of places. I wouldn't be getting told I can't go in places. I wouldn't have all the bullcrap happen that happens when I'm on public transportation. None of that stuff would happen if I was with somebody that's older. And so, yeah, that and the fact that white people think that I'm like 11 to 13. So then there's that, and that makes them want to harass me and try to throw me in jail even more because they know that they can, because that's what happens when you're younger. You can just get thrown in jail for any and everything. Well, for nothing. Because America criminalizes childhood or just being young. I don't really like the whole childhood thing though, because like being a child, that would be like younger than 9, but ageism is ageism, and it happens. I'm not gonna lie though, this does really make me want to have a spot. Not that I didn't want to, I just haven't been able to find a camp spot since I've been where I've been at. Like, I went to this one mountain, but I didn't know that it was like a ski resort and that there was going to be snow everywhere, because that's where I was going to camp while I'm still in the place I'm in. But yeah, that went how that went. But if I had a camp spot, I would obviously keep my sleeping bag and stuff in my tent, and I wouldn't have the bag that I carried around in my hand all the time. I don't walk around with my sleeping bag and stuff attached to my book bag because that makes it obvious and visible that I'm carrying around a sleeping bag. And in places like this with high homeless populations, whenever somebody sees somebody with a sleeping bag, or not even just with a sleeping bag, if you just have a mat, or even if you just have on a book bag, really, people automatically assume that you're homeless. It's really hard to get around in places like this. And it's really interesting because, like I said before, when I was in other places and I would be sitting outside of different shopping centers on the phone or just reading a book, I mean, sure, it would make people wonder, but nobody automatically assumed I was homeless, and I didn't have security guards running up to me threatening to arrest me and things like that. But yeah, and a lot of people don't care because as of right now, it mostly seems like law enforcement is only around and constantly around to harass the homeless, but that's going to change as the B system unravels more. Oh dang, now I see the police, or at least I think that's what it is, or sheriff, but I don't know what they're about to do. A state trooper. See, now I gotta be paranoid because it's like you can't really do anything. But yeah, anywho. In fact, no, not even just about the fact that I have to be paranoid, but just the fact that there's just so much law enforcement presence everywhere in places with high homeless populations, specifically for the homeless people. Like, I mean, like I just said, in the rich areas, you don't just have like the police and everybody just sitting in parking lots waiting to see somebody who looks like they may possibly not have anywhere to go, or to just accuse somebody of being homeless. Kind of reminds me of situations I've seen with construction workers, because construction workers commonly have paint all over their clothes, or they just look kind of dusty, and they have those outfits they wear to work every day with the paint all over so they don't mess up their regular clothes. I've seen a lot of situations where they've been harassed by law enforcement and other people, had store owners talk junk to them or not want to let them in just because they assumed that they were homeless. And it's all really interesting. And it's all pride and vanity too. But yeah, anywho. In fact, no, another thing. Where I'm currently at, they have security robots. They have a robot that drives around, and it has cameras all over it. And it looks for people who, I guess like homeless people who are sleeping, things like that. And it takes a picture of them. Well, not even just that, it's live recording too. So yeah, there's that. So now I'm about to start actually reading my notes. So I wrote about how it's kind of like being in jail but outside. It's like you can't really go anywhere or do anything. And if you look more stereotypically homeless, it's even worse for you. Like, I was on the bus and this homeless dude was singing, and people were scared of him because of the whole people being scared of mentally ill people thing, or supposed mentally ill people. But it's honestly really interesting because America as a whole has an obsession with mental illness and mental labels, and most Americans claim to have some mental illness and are on some a lot are on some psychotropic, but most claim to have anxiety or OCD. So it's weird that everybody claims to be mentally ill, but they're scared of quote unquote mentally ill people. But anyway, this homeless dude was on the bus and he was singing and he was dancing because that's how people cope with life. And I remember when I got off the train, not bus, it was the train, he told me about how he was looking for his wife and some other stuff. Because a lot of people out here, not only have they been in the military, you would honestly, if you knew how many homeless people are veterans, you would never want to go into the military. But that's a video of its own. But I already have a whole playlist about the military and how that is. So anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, a lot of homeless people they've went through divorces that have messed them up and things like that. But anyway, the security ended up getting on the train and they asked me if I had seen anything weird or suspicious and if I seen anybody acting weird, and I was like, no, I haven't seen anything. And honestly, I hadn't really been paying attention because I was reading a book or something. And either way, I'm not about to contribute to people getting somebody kicked off a train just because they're scared of them or they look scary or the person's quote unquote acting weird. I'm not about to contribute to people's mess. Because even if I hadn't been the quote unquote bad person or quote unquote retarded person that is lesser than or is the person to use and torture, I still wouldn't contribute to it. I wouldn't be into it regardless, but there was that. And also the fact that he had tattoos, that makes people feel some type of way too. But the thing is, he obviously is a Freemason because he has Freemason tattoos. And a lot of Freemasons, they have these tattoos all over them. But he also did look kind of stereotypically homeless. So, of course, he's going to get more crap for that from people. And then another thing I could go into is, I don't even know what I was about to say. So, back to the notes. Excuses for people not letting me in stores or kicking me out is me being homeless or supposedly being homeless. Just the accusation of me being homeless. Because there's a racial side to it in places like this too. And then also being told that I'm not old enough. In fact, in certain states, I'm not old enough to even go into a McDonald's. And the issue with that is that I don't have quote-unquote grown people to take me places and walk me into stores and walk me into fast food places and walk me wherever. I don't have any of that. So not being able to go in places because of ageism is a really big issue for a lot of people because everybody doesn't have somebody who's, 30, 40 to walk them in places. Okay, reading my notes and getting to the point. They're going to make everyone feel trapped in their own towns and neighborhoods. And when the beast system really starts to roll out even more, especially once Obama steps back onto the scene, or even before that, that's going to really, really be a thing. And if you know about the beast system, it's going to be a one-world monetary system. And it's like, with the things that I've seen with these different law enforcement agencies since I've been traveling around, because mind you, I've been to every state on the West Coast, almost everyone on the East Coast, and a lot on the bottom. And here comes the security again. But anyway, I just see this getting worse and worse as time goes on. And then, they're going to make... Okay, I already read that. You used to be able to go to the library without being watched, questioned, harassed, and possibly locked up or banned. Oh, and then that's another thing. I don't know if I mentioned that, but you can get banned from places too for looking asleep or being asleep. And it's a big thing in these areas, these mostly Caucasian areas. These Caucasian areas that have normalized drugs for forever and a day and called it being a hippie and all that. Which, of course, is spreading. I'm not going to act like it's not spreading, but like I always say, the quote-unquote black population lives in the South. So people try to be like, well, I mean, there's some black people in Oakland. Yeah, there's some black people in Oakland, but California is mostly Caucasian, so what's your point? But anywho, getting back to the point. Due to how the drug issue, which is really depopulation, it's all an agenda, it's social experiments, but due to the drug issue and the fentanyl and the other things that I can't remember the name of, crisis as they're calling it, people are overdosing on the streets all day, every day. Like, the most I ever seen anybody die was at a shelter in California where people pretty much overdosed all day, every day. Multiple people would die in one day. And that's what they want to happen. And people are always trying to say that homeless people don't want to go to shelters because they don't want to not have to do drugs, which there's so much bull crap about that and so many reasons that that's not true. But shelters don't make people not do drugs. I mean, they can't really do that unless they're offering rehab or forcing rehab, which they're not going to do because then they lose money. Shelters will actually kick you out or not allow you in if you don't do drugs, because then they can't make money off of you. At least they can make money off of you a lot less, because you're more likely to be able to actually possibly figure something out to get out of the situation. But I mean, it's not always that easy, but still, it's just a lot of mess with that. But anywho, due to all that, places don't want you to be asleep or look asleep or fall asleep because of the fact that you could possibly be dead, and they don't want to be held accountable if you are dead or if you have been dead and you've just been laying somewhere dead for days. Which is really interesting because nobody ever gets held accountable. Like, the doctors are the ones making and giving out the drugs. And, of course, law enforcement are the ones trafficking it too. But nobody's ever actually held accountable for any of this. But, anywho, what was the next thing? Another thing, they're always looking for hints that you may be homeless. You can't even look sleep or look tired without getting accused of being homeless or being on drugs, especially in the West Coast. And that especially thing is definitely true, because when it started snowing and it was 15 degrees and I was in NC and I was at that emergency shelter at that Catholic church thing or whatever in the world it was, people weren't getting accused of being on drugs. I mean, it's really interesting how this goes, to be honest. In the areas where people do the most drugs and where pretty much everyone's kind of on drugs, or at least, I mean, that's what they say, which I have a whole video I'm going to make about that, about how even the people that have been through rehab have no accountability. And it's like they feel like because they're on drugs, everyone is, but in areas where people have normalized weed and all that and it's legal, and pretty much everyone's walking around with a vape or something, they have specific issues with homeless people doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, or with poor people doing the same thing everyone else is doing, which everybody's pretty much poor now, but they don't see it yet, but that's another video of its own. It's I lost my whole train of thought. Let me get back to the point, because I was about to go somewhere else. But anyway, the point I was making was that when I was in NC, people weren't assuming or accusing me of being on drugs just because of my situation. But in areas where they've normalized drugs, they do. I think I've mentioned this before. I'm about to go off way somewhere else, and I'm gonna hopefully make a video about this specifically. And honestly, I think I already did, but as far as the whole gang stalking thing that everyone's talking about, now, of course, there's a lot of spiritual mental warfare with that and trauma stuff, which it seems like it's usually people that have been through a lot of situations where they've had a lot of people coming at them and being abusive to them, which I know a lot about. And of course, certain people with certain calls in their life are the ones to go through that, and the whole point is to make you lose your mind. But I totally see how people that are already really deep into paranoia due to different things that have happened to them, because of course mental illness comes from trauma, I totally see how this heightened security in law enforcement in these certain areas can make somebody go even deeper into paranoia and schizophrenia and stuff. Like, honestly, I would hate to be somebody with those types of issues in areas like this. And another thing before I go, because I thought I had more notes, but I guess I don't. But if I do find any more, I'll just put everything in the description. So another thing, this kind of goes into the Lucifer effect, which is an experiment, an experiment, a torturous one, that of course uses school kids. I guess it could also be considered like a psychiatric trial or something. I don't really remember exactly what they call them, but you could probably find an article about it or something. This deliverance lady even mentioned it in a video that I shared a post of. I don't even remember which one it was, because I think I shared like 3 of her videos before. And this also goes back to reactive abuse. So, back to the whole people being really paranoid and the whole gang stalking thing, which I mean, sure, some people, well, honestly, a lot of people are, but it's really a spiritual thing more so than physical. I mean, sure, whistleblowers, like people who are spreading awareness about trafficking or who have escaped trafficking, especially the people that are born into it, are going to have, like, people actually really stalking them and following them around, but more so it seems to be a spiritual thing for like anointed or prophetic people who are being driven crazy, and the spirits in people are causing people to like harass you and do things to you, and even generational curses that put you in certain situations to drive you crazy and where you're going to constantly be vulnerable, which there's so much I could say about that. But if you see it as a physical thing and not a spiritual thing, you could easily lose your mind from that, because as I've commonly felt, and as many people in abuse situations and that are commonly in certain types of situations and on certain parts of the caste system have, what was I going to say? I don't even know, but you're just going to end up feeling like people hate you, or like, well, not even people hate you, some do, but like everyone does at certain points in times in your situation. But if you see that as a physical thing and you don't really understand the spiritual side to it, you can easily start to lose your mind because of that. And that's why people feel like everybody's after them who's really not. But the thing is, when you're in certain situations where you have security and law enforcement constantly harassing you, you do have like certain people after you, and that can really get to you. And then when you talk about the issues with that and how people may be abusing you or being abusive to you just because they can or due to certain reasons, like with homelessness, or maybe because you're young and you're the quote-unquote child that needs to just stay in a child's place and be abused and tortured and trafficked. People will just act like you're overreacting, and they'll gaslight you, and they'll say that you're just making it up, or that you're just complaining because you don't want to fix your situation and get your stuff together, or get your SHIT together, as people like to say. And the thing with that is that when you're in lower positions, like you're the bad kid or the bad black kid or the poor person or the homeless person or the retarded person, you're seen as somebody who deserves things, and you're seen as someone where how you feel doesn't matter, and you're pretty much subhuman. And the demons and people really manifest against you. One, because of the calling on your life, and a lot of things are revolved around that. And so it's like, what point was I getting at? I don't even remember. I'll just put it in the description because the security coming back around and I need to leave anyway.